Welcome to the Raise podcast. I'm Carol Barwick. We're here to raise your confidence and inspire your creativity. Each episode, we will have a different guest who will be discussing our Raise word. The Raise word is a word that will encourage you or empower you and at times inspire you to explore the word a little more for yourself. Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Raise podcast. Not just to an episode of the Raise podcast, but the Christmas episode of the Raise podcast. And I'm very excited about my guest today. Now, I've been very excited about introducing him in this way, so here goes. Some say that he has been involved in writing some of the greatest UK sitcoms of all time. All we know is he's called Paul Kerensa.
I see what you did there. I see what I thought. I know that particular vocab. I know that language. I know that way of speaking. That would be the Stig and the Top Gear kind of thing, wouldn't it?
It will. So for those who have not come across you in person, Paul, you have been involved in writing for Top Gear, for Miranda, Not Going Out,
Indeed.
Dead Ringers.
A bit of that. Yep.
Amazing. And we're going to get into all of that in due course. But before we do anything else, we're going to introduce our Raise word, which is tradition. And what I'd like to know, Paul, is what does the word tradition mean to you?
What does it mean to me? I suppose tradition to me is, generally speaking, seen as a good thing. Quite right too. Building each year on the good stuff, keeping the good, getting rid of the bad, and keeping what we like, I suppose, and realizing that actually there's a benefit to a sense of ritual to it as well, I suppose. Annual ritual, the fact that we have certain festivities that we just like doing, but often it's about doing these things together. There's a certain sense of togetherness. And after the last 2 years of COVID and lockdowns and things, some of those traditions have been disrupted, and then you come back and you sort of, again, you keep the good stuff. You bring forward onward from here the things that have worked for generations, or indeed you start new ones maybe as well. So there's a sense of clinging to what we think is helpful, I suppose, and trying to get it right next time.
Love that. Yeah. I've not really thought about it that way before, but you're right. And particularly in the lockdown, you're right, that we were either clinging to traditions for dear life, or you're right, we were having to create new ones, the doorstep visits and those kind of things that we wouldn't normally choose as a tradition, but maybe other traditions have come out of it. What are your kind of traditions at Christmas, Paul? What do you like doing?
Well, I always think that I've been fascinated with Christmas for years now, and I think one of the things I love about it, and yet also maybe sometimes loathe about it, is just how many traditions there are to do with it. And I think in a way you can't do them all. You have to pick and choose. And I think a lot of that Christmas anxiety we get is from thinking, but I must do everything. It's such a busy time. I've got to do the Christmas shopping and the turkey and the panto and then the Christmas lights, and the kids like to do this and my in-laws like to do that and so on. And you can't please all the people all the time, but you've got to work together as a family, I think, or friends or whoever you are, go, right, what matters to us? And so certain things that almost go without saying, we have the roast turkey dinner, we have crackers, although I've never been that bothered about crackers. It's one of those things that I'm happy to let go.
This is not a controversial podcast, Paul. Well, we're going to be having lots and lots of fights over this.
I'm instantly, it's funny you say what traditions do you have. I'm instantly thinking the ones that I don't really mind about, which are Christmas cards. I'm terrible with Christmas cards. People send them still, and I'm guilty of doing the email to all saying, instead of Christmas cards, we thought we'd do a donation to a charity, and rather more swiftly, wish you all well from here. But it's one of those
we'll go back to that in a minute.
It's persistent, isn't it? But no, but generally, to answer your question, and not a completely different question, I do like to. I'm busy before Christmas. I do lots of comedy shows before Christmas. So, but a trip to the panto, normally in New Year for us. So I think a lot of people try and do it before Christmas. We're the ones who go when it's a bit quieter in like January the 3rd or something, when they're going, please, we're still here, come on out.
Yes.
And that's when I like to do a bit of that. But also last few years, we drive around, look at the Christmas lights on the houses with the kids, normally on Christmas Eve. But that's changed. You know, go back 10, 15 years, Christmas Eve was always for me a pub visit with my friends.
Yeah.
And they still go. And now I'm driving around with the kids looking at lights. So, you know, things changed, don't they?
Yeah. And do you score the Christmas lights? When we walk
That's
around and we score the Christmas lights, and then we put a little card through if we think they've done particularly well.
Oh, that's a nice. We might do that. This is how traditions not only evolve, but they spread. Like they go viral, don't they? You see. Yes. So now I'm thinking that's a nice idea. That's a nice plan. I like that one.
Yeah. And then not such a nice idea, as I was saying, going back to cards, I actually ended up writing a poem once called A Cynical Carol, which was just about how I just don't get cards, really. I don't understand them. And as a writer like yourself, you would think that cards would be the thing you really love doing, but I just don't get it, because it just feels like you're writing, dear this person that I see all the time, have a lovely Christmas, even though I'm going to see you. Love from me.
Absolutely. I know. It is. I think it's one of those things that I can see why they started. It's 1843, the first Christmas card, and then they persist. But they've kind of, when they got a bit too crazy commercial. I mean, we've got one friend of ours who I shall not name, just in case, but who prides herself, family friend, prides herself on being the first every year to send out Christmas cards. And it's sometimes she can't wait to December the 1st. Sometimes it's November 30th and they're out in the post. And she'll phone you up and go, did mine arrive first? Was mine the first on your mantelpiece? And it's all very well. But then you open the card and most years she's not even written to whoever. It's just got at the bottom almost stamped, you know, the name of the person who sent it. Okay. And therefore it's not a personalized Christmas card. It's not to us. It's to all of my friends as quickly as possible, as many of them as possible, to put a flag in the ground. And in fairness to her, that's what she wants to do, and I salute that. But in terms of asking, you know, me to do the same, that's unlikely.
Interesting, because I was going to expand on what I said about giving out awards for Christmas lights, and I was thinking you could have awards for your friends, you know, the quickest Christmas card and the Christmas lights, and you could make a whole thing of it and really alienate everybody in one go.
That's true, exactly.
The spirit of Christmas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, one thing we do actually is we take it. My wife started this. She'd always done this tradition. So when we got married, I've sort of taken this on. But when the cards come down on, well, I don't know if we make it to January the 6th, but whenever the cards come down, they don't all go in the bin. What we do is, firstly, we appreciate them. Yeah. And then secondly, we are there as a family with scissors and we cut the cards which have covers on, which don't have writing on the back. So if someone's not scribbled on the back of the front cover, that becomes next year's present labels. So the cards, so good. Yeah, they have a life thereafter.
That's so good. That I like that tradition. One of the things we do with presents is we always pray for the people that have given us the presents. So I try and take a long time. My mum kind of started that, and it's that thoughtfulness and, as you said, kind of bringing the tradition, like making it, I don't know, longevity of a tradition, which is a big thing for tradition, isn't it?
Well, I think so. And I think the traditions that we particularly flock to, that we as a family do anyway, or that I think particularly nice, are those that have some sort of positive onward effect, you know, like gathering. So, you know, just as we go to Panto, I know, you know, we have a carol service we go to. I do these shows called Comedians in Carols, which I've just sort of taken for granted last few years. But I've had one or two people come up to me last year and say, oh, this is our tradition. We come, because I sometimes go out to the same church 10 years in a row, and it turns out now we have families who've grown up through that tradition. And just as I go to the Panto with my kids in January, their thing is the week before Christmas they always come to this comedy and carol show that I do. Aww. And that's really lovely that to be part of that person's tradition. I mean, it's gathering, it's fun, it's joyous. But like one tradition, for example, that we haven't done is the rather recent Elf on the Shelf. And you know, it's one of those things that looks A, time consuming, B, a bit messy, C, a bit just, I don't know, over commercialized, and I couldn't quite latch on to the sense of joy and fun. But as a result, some of my daughters, my kids aren't too bothered about it, but some of their classmates go, oh, what's your elf done last night, whatever. And we go, we don't really do that. And the friends, what? Humbug, you know, how dare I don't know, they sort of quite say humbug.
Poor thing, oh
exactly,
my goodness,
it's like we're depriving them by not doing the elf. But you can't do everything. You've got to pick your favorites, haven't you?
Yeah. So we had an angel, But actually what the angel did was she arrived every day, and she would tell my son what he was going to do during the day, whether it meant he was actually doing quite boring things like practicing for a script or wrapping some presents or writing Christmas cards. But every day she would appear. She would often bring him something as well. And he had an advent calendar too. But that worked for us really well. So there wasn't naughtiness, and it was actually a way of helping me and my husband as parents to remember everything.
Yeah, well, that's not. I mean, you can. That's the night you can tweak. I like the little tweaks people do to traditions as well, and just go, oh, this is our little thing. So my kids like to do Christmas countdowns. They make their own, so they're like advent calendars in a way, I suppose. But they just design a thing, knock it off each day.
Oh, I love it.
We have an advent candle, which we've always liked lighting, and it's just light in the darkness. That is a massive Christmas tradition. And actually beyond just Christmas, winter tradition, one of my interfaith heart was full of joy when my daughter, when she was 7, in the playground chatting with her school friend who's Hindu, and they're talking about Diwali celebrations, and my daughter was going, what's Diwali then? And the friend was going, oh, it's about light in the darkness in winter, in cold winter months. And my daughter's going, oh, we do the same. We have light candles at Christmas, and we have Christmas lights up. And you could see them both going, oh, great, look at these commonalities that our two faiths have. And I was going, the fact it was like an RE lesson spreading it into the playground, but certainly that Christian message of Christ, light of the world, and that I love the fact it's changed over the years. He's gone from fires in fireplaces to candles to lights on a tree, Christmas lights in the town square, and it's kind of what you need to get through these rather dark Christmas winter months, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually, what I hear you saying there as well is, well, you said it at the beginning. Tradition brings people together, but like your sister and her friend, daughter, excuse me, and her friend. It brought them together into very, very different ways, two very different traditions and festivals. But as you said, this commonality, which is so important. So I thought we'd have a game of, well, it's not would you rather, but it's kind of would you rather. So what I want to know is, do you prefer the Christmas #1 that we used to have, or the Christmas adverts that now come out?
Okay, well, it's interesting you say Christmas #1 that we used to have, because we sort of don't have it as much anymore, do we? I mean, it exists as a thing, I suppose. Something's #1, but it's not quite the same.
I think it might be football based this year as well.
Oh, is it?
I'm thinking.
Oh dear!
Maybe
I'll switch right off. I'm going to say adverts then, I think, because the Christmas #1, generally speaking, was always a fairly crushing disappointment, and they've always been. I was looking back at this a few years ago. There's not much to do with Christmas traditions I've not at some point delved into and fallen down those rabbit holes, but it's a fairly recent thing, because the Christmas, you've got the 1940s, all those Christmas crooners like your Dean Martins and Nat King Coles, but that was never really about a Christmas #1 thing. And then in the 60s, even, most Christmas #1s happened to be the Beatles, and it wasn't a Christmas themed song, it's just they happened to be #1. And then it's the 1970s really when you got your Slade versus Wizard, and then onward, and then the 80s, I think the golden era surely for Christmas pop music, from your Whams and your Band-Aids and Chris Reas and everything. So that was then, but ever since then really, it's been a bit, there was the X Factor era of the Christmas #1 and all those things. I'm not so sure. Whereas a good Christmas advert, they plan it all year. And I think probably the John Lewis ad has got a lot to answer for the last few years. But the Sainsbury's one a few years ago, they had the Christmas truce in the trenches.
Yeah, amazing.
And it was beautifully done. Really, really. I mean, that really portrayed the Christmas truce. I've seen countless versions of that on screen in films. And they nailed it in 90 seconds. I thought was just quite beautifully done. So I think you can maybe get a slightly better story, maybe if you have that visual storytelling. Sometimes they just want to flog cheap turkeys.
No,
but
consumerism at Christmas, never. Not here, never.
No. Some can be nice. Some adverts can be, if you've done right, then
my choir have a tradition. In fact, it's my tradition really, which is that we always mash up the John Lewis advert with a Christmas carol. So we've done that for the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh, very
so we're enjoying doing a mashup of all the small things at the moment. Yeah, it's a good little tradition. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes not so well. I think this one is quite a good one. But again, going back to that little filmic bit that the Sainsbury's did, and all other supermarkets are available.
Of course.
It was bringing it to a whole host of people that otherwise wouldn't have seen it, because it was child friendly, and that's often what happens with the Christmas adverts, isn't it? They're suitable for all, so suddenly everything becomes accessible, and then the questions start coming, and you think about things in a different way. And certainly, as you said, John Lewis, with regards to fostering and the importance of really looking out for the lonely and the needy at this time of year. Again, I think it's really nailed it.
Yeah, well, in fact, do you know what? I've actually not seen yet any of this year's Christmas ads. We will be sitting down as a family and binge watching all of them.
Oh wow! Is that a new tradition?
Well, we thought we might start it just because we've not managed to find time to watch it.
The Christmas adverts.
Exactly, and you can get through them quite quick. Probably about 10 minutes, you do the lot. But but no, I think I've been actually lecturing lately in screenwriting, particularly about adaptations at Winchester University, and so many of those when you're trying to work out how to adapt a story into some sort of screen written thing, it's those same motifs of hope and optimism and looking forward and life lessons we can learn, and stories as survival techniques and oral traditions of handing down these tales down campfires over the generations. And now our way of doing it is visually on screen. So the way that a good Christmas advert, if done right, can tell a nice little story of benevolence and goodness, and it's the ones that do that and do it right, I think are just beautiful.
I hope this episode with Paul has got you feeling really Christmassy. Christmas is a good time of year to make sure that you're in a community and you're feeling supported. So do find us at Raising Confidence, Inspiring Creativity Community over on Facebook, and come and join in the fun. Please also leave us a 5-star rating. We like Christmas presents too. You can do that on any of the platforms you listen to. Back to the episode. So, Paul, I feel like I've planned out your Christmas for you now. We've got a top 10 Christmas adverts. You're going to go and rate the Christmas lights. You're going to tell the person that did the Christmas card really quickly, give them an award. We've got all that sorted out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit, because I know that I'm very excited about this, because every year at Christmas, my husband particularly starts saying Hark quite a lot. Hark.
Right.
The oven is on. Hark, the cat needs to go out.
Yes.
And you have a book called Hark.
Called Hark. Yeah.
So tell us about Hark. It's all about Christmas traditions, and tell us about that.
Yeah. So I wrote it probably, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, something like that. Yeah. And it was the culmination of years of being fascinated by Christmas, and why we do what we do at Christmas, really. So I was trying to do a history book, but also one that is sort of fun, but isn't just light trivia. I wanted to actually, the more I dug into it, the more I wanted to go, okay, there is a reason that we do everything we do at Christmas. And it's probably a fairly chronological reason. So rather than leap around the timeline too much, I picked the 12 dates of Christmas, so to speak, rather tenuously, but the dates that I think Christmas, specific moments in history where Christmas changed in some way because of someone's decision. And normally it's just what I found fascinating as well was it's often creative, often Christian creative individuals, and it's not some giant plan from an organization or a government necessarily, but it's those little moments, just little things like Dickens. His first 8 Christmases were white Christmases, and it just happened to be that he was born at the end of the mini ice age. I think when he was 2 or 3, it was the last time the Thames froze. You could have those frost fairs on frost fairs on the Thames. Yeah. And so when he writes about a Christmas in A Christmas Carol, he makes it snow because at the end, especially at the end, and make it feel like an old Christmas, because he wanted his readers to think, oh yeah, this is how Christmas was when I grew up, and it's how it should be, And because of that, we think of a white Christmas, even though there's hardly any white Christmases at all for the last 100 years. So all those little just little moments of decisions can just spark you off in a new direction. And not only that, of course, but Christmas Carol has in it everything from a morality lesson to, again, that sense of it's good to gather. You know, it's the one who's out on his own being a Scrooge and humbug, glimpsing through other people's houses and go, oh, that's how they celebrate. That's how I should and maybe could celebrate. But also, it's not the size of your turkey. It's about, you know, the who you're with and how you do it. All of those things. Mulled wine is in there as well. One of the first mentions of those sorts of things. So, and one of the first mentions of Merry Christmas is in A Christmas Carol as well. So loads of stuff in there. And there's people also, you know, another guy like Francis of Assisi, go back 600 years earlier, and he gives us the first Christmas songs that aren't in Latin, really, the first songs in local languages. He puts on the first live nativity scene, really, with real animals and people portraying it, so people could then, and this matters not just as a commercial thing, but people could then visualize it. They come from the town down below up to the caves and see these monks portraying shepherds with actual animals and go, oh, I get it now. I get it. This is about a poor family in my situation. You know, they were suddenly realizing it wasn't just about being preached at in Latin on a Sunday, but a living humanity to it. So moments like that I was fascinated by, as well as, you know, why do Japanese people eat KFC for Christmas? They just do. They eat KFC for Christmas because years ago, American businessmen were there looking for a turkey, couldn't find one, went to KFC, and they started this tradition. And now it's huge in Japan. KFC, Kentucky for Christmas, every year, massive campaign. So, you know, there's light trivia buried in there as well as the bigger stories.
So all those people that over the years, because they've struggled in one way or another and just thought, no, I'm not doing turkey, I'm not doing trimmings, this isn't what I need, I'm going to KFC, can now legitimately say, let's having a Japanese Christmas.
Exactly. In fact, that you pre-order your Christmas boxes there, and you go. It's true. It's a massive thing, and of course, I think it helps as well that the logo, of the person behind KFC is a man with a white beard. You know, it all of that helps, I think. So
symbolism,
nudge it in that direction. So there are loads of lovely little bits of Christmassy trivia. I mean, the other, what's the other? But burrito. The burrito has a Christmassy link to it as well, because burrito is Spanish for little donkey.
It is.
So there you are, you know, burrito, little donkey.
Wow. I just have to have a minute.
Yeah,
that's blown my mind.
That in.
I learned Spanish, so I should have known that ages ago, but wow. But
The thing is,
thing
is though, Little Donkey isn't a song it's not one of those carols that has traveled the world. Certain carols have, you know, Hark the Herald and Silent Night and things like that. But Little Donkey, I didn't realize how it's only about half a century old. It's a Geordie folk singer who was actually far prouder of his other animal-based songs, including I've Got a Little Whippet. And he used to sing these little animal songs around folk clubs. And then he wrote Little Donkey. And that song followed him round for years, like a donkey, I suppose. But he got rather fed. I think he got rather fed up of it and thought, why does no one listen to my funny other animal songs? But no, sorry.
Well, you've got to have the kind of the catalyst song, haven't you? So if people then listen to Little Donkey, and so here we are. We always have a challenge. If you want to go and find out, do we know the name of the guy that wrote Little Donkey?
We do, and it should be at the tip of my fingers, shouldn't it? But it's
I
Eric.
don't think you're expecting to.
I think it's. I'm going to challenge myself. I think it's Eric Boswell, and I'm now going to find out as we speak.
Let's get him to Christmas #1. Come on, Eric Boswell for Christmas #1.
Come on, we can do this. We can do this.
Can do this.
It is. It's Eric Boswell. There you go.
There you go. Right. So we'll probably have a bit more of a serious Christmas challenge in a minute. But for now, Eric Boswell for Christmas #1. What do you reckon, Paul? Can we do it?
I think we can do it. I think
this get it trending on.
I think his song about his whippet, I think, is great. It's all about gambling on basically the rank outsider, you know, and you know, saying it's a bit this lame dog who's there at the back, but no one puts money on him and all that sort of thing. So it's literally the underdog, I suppose, isn't it? But
there you go. Wow. I am learning so much. It's not often that I don't have a lot to say on this podcast, but that Little Donkey really knocked me for 6.
The burrito, yeah.
I was listening to something else that you were doing on a podcast, and you were talking about the the King's speech as it was when it started, and then obviously the Queen's speech. Tell me a little bit about the origin of that, because that was interesting.
Yeah, well, my major project at the minute has been sort of chronicling the origins of broadcasting. I do this podcast, the British Broadcasting Century podcast, is all about the early BBC, how that began, and 1932, you get the first King's speech, the first Royal Christmas message, not the first in the world. Holland just beat us to it, rather frustratingly. We could have had it that we were number one, but because John Reith was trying to convince King George for years to do a Christmas message. But it goes to show what an important moment this was, because the king kept turning it down, saying, no, it's not appropriate for the monarch's voice to sort of enter the houses of people in the country. We should remain distant. We should remain as a rather discreet and distant and separate entity. And he had to really, I think it was only actually when the BBC started its Empire service, which was, the world service as it now is really, when actually the king was convinced. And also it was the early 30s, fascism on the rise. You could see the mood, the atmosphere in Europe was not a happy one. And I think there was a real sense of, okay, we do now need to use this technology to speak to people across the world, give them hope and encouragement, say your king is here for you. But he really didn't want to do it, to the point he was so nervous. He was there in Sandringham in the royal house for Christmas, and they had a little studio under the stairs, and on the table they put a little sort of a baize carpet thing, telling the king this was for acoustics, but actually it was to stop his rather drumming fingers from making a sound on the microphone. So he was incredibly nervous, bless him. But there you are.
Wow. So, and then obviously the Queen's speech has been a big tradition for so many, and we're now going to be going back to having a King's speech again. Be interesting to see the kind of thing that he says, and I wonder if he'll break tradition in some way and start something new, or carry on from where Her Majesty left off.
Well, indeed, it's all about, as we said at the start, tradition and building on that and how it changes. And obviously the Queen has, because of the longevity of her reign, she has owned the royal Christmas message in a way that no one else on the planet has, really. There's no one who's done as many as she has. And she also saw that move to television. She was the first one to do it on television. You can watch it on YouTube. It's a lovely bit of footage of her first televised one. Just this young lady saying, welcome to my home. This is my home. I thank you for welcoming me to yours. And that a very immersive sense. She became known as One Take Windsor because she was just so good at doing it. Wow. And so I think Charles, of course, will have his own way of doing it, but I imagine he's going to build very heavily on the way that the Queen has established it. Yeah,
because it is a tradition for so many people, and there will be a great expectation. And I think that's the thing around tradition, and something that can sometimes be a bit more difficult, because there's a lot of expectation around tradition, isn't there? I was speaking to the people in my Raise community group about what tradition means, and a lot of them were talking about it's memories, it's remembering, and protecting those kind of memories, but also being free to put your own spin on it and make it your own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and tradition doesn't change quickly for that reason, I think, because you want it to be built on those memories of the past. So I think Charles will have to absolutely keep things largely the same. But that's, again, the royals have always successfully done that. They know part of their raison d'etre is that we want to see a sense of a fairly Catholic with a small c, I suppose, that way of things have developed over the centuries, but there's still that solid line really to how things were done in the olden days. And that's what the royals have been about. That's why Britain's rather got that reputation in the world, I guess, of being rather good old-fashioned, blighty and that sort of thing. And certainly the British Christmas as well. It all ties in, that the way that the early BBC helped spread the British Christmas overseas. And as a result, you can see the places where there was a British Empire, in places like Australia and Canada and corners of the world, that now have a fairly British style Christmas. And, you see on the beaches of Bondi Beach in Sydney, even though it's summer over there, people are dressed as Father Christmas, largely because it's the British Christmas that was essentially advertised to them. You know, they say the BBC doesn't do advertising. Well, it advertised, you know, the British Christmas and a lot of our customs all across the world from the 1930s onwards, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have to admit, I thought Paddington might crop up in a Christmas advert this year.
Yes.
And I did wonder if Jongleurs were going to try and do that, but maybe.
I bet they asked. I bet they tried, but
yeah.
I think Paddington, his fees have gone up now. You know,
he's a difficult bear to get hold of.
I think 5 years ago you could have got him for a bargain. But
marmalade sandwich, I would imagine.
Absolutely, that would have done it.
Whereas now, he's I think he's probably got his own agent, and
I think you're right. Yeah,
busy bear, busy time.
He is.
Yeah. Just going back to the idea of tradition and memories and how important it is to kind of keep these things going. How much do you think that factors in terms of the depression that you can see around Christmas and the need to do the Christmas photo with the Christmas pajamas in front of the great big Christmas tree?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around that?
It is something we struggle with a lot, certainly in our house as well, is when to say no at Christmas, really. And especially when new things come in and someone, you know, a new group of people says, oh, hey, wouldn't it be lovely if we all did this? And, oh, let's also do a Secret Santa, and let's all wear funny antlers, and let's wear sparkly things, and let's do this. And so sometimes you have to just go, I'm at capacity, and I can't do all that. I'd love to, but I've got to ring fence myself, you know, a little. And we've certainly done a bit of that because it's my busiest time of year occupationally as well. Certainly at the minute when, you know, with the gigs, the live entertainment scene, the live comedy has been slow to come back since COVID. We're you know, busy enough, I suppose, but at the same time, maybe half of the comedy clubs have come back as there were. So in the course of the year, it could be a bit slow. Therefore, in December, you got all sorts of comedians and entertainers suddenly going, right, grab it all while you can, because in January and February, that's going to go quiet. People aren't going out in January, whereas at Christmas they just do. So I'm busy, and the school keeps, you know, we're always getting new messages back from the school going, oh, well, it's the carol service on the Tuesday, it's the Christmas panto on the Thursday, we've got the fancy dress competition on the Wednesday, and it's bananas. So at some point you have to just learn to say no to some things and try and do a few things well rather than lots of things in a manic rush. Yeah,
my son and I one year did, I can't remember, it was the parents' 12 days of Christmas, and we had all the different things. I make 8 gifts for the teachers, 7 different costumes for the nativity, 5 cards for your friends, etc., etc. And at the 13th day I had a large glass of wine, because that was what I needed after the 12th day of Christmas.
I can imagine. I can imagine that's a mold, I'm sure.
Of course, yeah. But I do think it's so important, because I'm seeing more and more at the moment on the socials about, it's not about the pajamas and the photos and how you present. And let's face it, that's very much what social media is about, how you present. More about, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm about to say this is incredibly cheesy.
Do it.
The present.
Yes, of course. Not the presents, but the presents, whatever it might be.
It
totally.
And really getting that message across, you know, and very much saying to people as well, I need you to know I'm someone that loves secondhand presents. I love homemade presents. So I said, you know, we always have a kind of a challenge, a call to action for you know, our people listening. So just remember that this Christmas, that you are the person that's people want to see, they want to know about you. You know, it's at the end of the day, when we were talking about cards and things like that, it's just an exchange of money. That's what a present is. Unless there's thought behind it, or it's homemade or something, it is just an exchange of money and expectation. And it's okay to go to KFC this Christmas and say to your family, this year we're going to enjoy Christmas as simply as possible, because then we'll enjoy it. Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, if it's an exchange of money, especially, you know, money that we haven't got at the minute necessarily, then I mean, one of our traditions as well, that my daughter's just started of her own free will. She's 9 now. She's been doing this for 3 years. So let's say she started it when she was 6. Is that in the month leading up to Christmas,
a book vanishes from my bookshelf. I can never work out which one, but there's always a gap there, and I don't know what it is. And I'll unwrap it on Christmas Day, and she'll go, "I saw it in the shop, and it reminded me of you." And I go, "This is my book from that shelf, isn't it?" "Yes, it is, Daddy. Yes, it is." And and in a way, I think I'd just be happy with that. Really, I don't think I need her to buy anything else. But it's always, an additional that as something else. But actually, that's part of the fun of it, and yeah, homemade things, thinking outside the box a bit, secondhand stuff. Why not? Absolutely. I think it's certainly, rather than an expensive thing that actually you get and go, "Oh, I've got one of these, I didn't want it in the first place," etc., etc., etc. But something that you could print out a photo and put it in a frame, or you can design a thing like that, or you can an idea I was thinking of for this year, I may not do it, but I saw online for 120 pounds, I think it was a photo frame of a map or a picture of somewhere where someone was born. There you go. And you can print it out and go, "Look, it's a picture of a map where you were born." And at the same time, I'm unaware of the copyright implications of this, I should add, before I go suggesting things. But surely you can go onto maps, you can find where someone was born, you can take a screenshot, take it to the printers, do it for a fiver, put it in a frame, and a similar effect's done, But although there are copyright implications, of course. But £120 to get a framed picture of a map, it's I don't think we need to go and spend those things when actually you can think outside the box a little bit and do something, just something that you think they might like, make a thing or whatever it might be, and just be there, just turning up. That's a nice thing as well, isn't it?
And I think we forget that, and then what happens is we do all the trimmings literally, and then we've got no energy for ourselves. And certainly for myself, that's the whole long COVID thing for me, and not having the energy. And I have to just say, well, if you want me, I'm going to have to put other things aside, which is not easy.
No,
it's not easy
exactly.
at all.
No, totally.
But it is really important, and that people know that they are important. And Christmas is about more than, as we said, just exchanging money, and people want to see you very much.
I like to make a quiz at Christmas, and sometimes I'm tempted to go, "This Christmas, instead of presents, I've made you this quiz," and we'll have a bit of fun doing that, whatever it might be. There are different ways we can do these things, isn't it? I think we do need a bit of it will be every year we say we need a reset on Christmas. We need a Control Alt Delete.
Yes.
And instead we can't quite do that as a society. But what we can do is just tweak our traditions a little bit and go with the stuff we like.
And I wonder if, to a degree, we got that slightly with lockdown, didn't we? Just a little bit of time to reset and be with our families only. And all the feelings that came with that. But I'm going to do a horrendous segue now, because you have got a book that's coming out, and it's coming out next year, isn't it? And I was going to say that also, if you see presents that you want to get people and it's not right on Christmas Day, that doesn't matter either, because I looked at the book and I thought, right, I know at least 2 people I'm going to buy that for. But just tell us a little bit about that book, because it's not Christmas based, but it's around isn't it?
It's so it was meant to be out now, really, for Christmas, and I know one or two people who got in touch and said it better be out by Christmas because it's on my list, and it won't be. It's due to be out in mid-February, but even then I'm still halfway through writing it. But I'm having such a blast writing it that I'm sort of slightly taking my time a bit on it. And it is a historical fiction. It is the true origin story of how British broadcasting began. So not just the BBC, but the idea of radio really comes from this, the idea of broadcasting. And the more I've been delving into it, I did this podcast about it. The podcast came from research for the book, really, because these real life characters, it's set around these 4 characters. So the book's called Auntie and Uncles because BBC is Auntie, and the radio uncles were the very first presenters, the aunties and the uncles, in fact. Okay. And but these 4, I was reading that statistic I read. In fact, it was when researching the book Hark, the Biography of Christmas, looking into the first BBC Christmas, and I read that the first BBC Christmas there were 4 employees at the BBC and 30,000 listeners. And I thought, who were those 4? Did they get along? No, they didn't, not all the time. And that sent me down a rabbit hole, really, just to look into who they were, why they didn't get along, the different ideas they had for what broadcasting could or should be. And so a few years ago now, I set myself that sort of challenge of like, okay, let's let's see just how much I can find out about this stuff. And in fact, as the BBC turned 100, I was invited on the new 6 o'clock news that day. In fact, it turned 100 at 6 o'clock.
Wow.
And I was there in the studio. But even then, only that very day was I doing some more research on it and discovered that first BBC broadcast, and it's not mentioned in the history books at all, but that very first BBC broadcast was essentially voluntary, because there was Arthur Burrows, who was the first voice, wasn't being paid for it. He just had this joy of wanting to try this thing. It was only a month later that he got the job of director of programs at the BBC. So I just thought, wow, this is a time where people were just trying stuff and seeing what happened. And so much of the things that we still have to this day just come out from those moments. The first religious broadcasts come out that sort of same time. Just the very first religious broadcast is just a vicar wanting to give it a go, and actually sets up on the altar a radio set, and then doesn't tell his congregation, goes 5 miles away, and then they turn up at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. Vicar's not there, but on top of the altar, this wooden box, and from it, his voice. And they'd never even heard of radio, let alone heard radio. Utterly baffled as to what happened that Sunday. But
wow. So he just broadcast to them from a box.
Yeah, he just broadcast from Blackheath in southeast London to Peckham, where they were, and he even had gramophone records with the hymns on. So I think the very first broadcast hymn he did was "O God, Our Help in Ages Past." So now, please stand, and we shall sing "O God, Our Help in Ages Past." And they all sort of, I guess, stood and looked at each other and go, What's happening now? What?
Wow.
Where's this voice coming from?
Talk about break from tradition. My goodness, that must have been quite a service.
Incredible. I'm thinking, I've just discovered the actual text of the sermon, so I'm thinking of maybe doing a little show next year somewhere on tour, or just in one venue if I can find it, to sort of recreate what that would have been like and deliver the same sermon that they would have heard.
Oh, surely it should be like in Shepherd's Bush or West London or somewhere near.
Well, I'd like to do it in Peckham Evangelical Church, where it originally happened. That would be wonderful.
If we've got any listeners that know ministers in Peckham, get in touch with Paul. Yeah. Paul, it's been absolutely brilliant, and it would be interesting to have you on again sometime and talk more about the whole broadcasting thing and that side of it as well. But as you said, you are an incredibly busy person at this time of year, so we really appreciate your time. We come to the time of the show where you get a little breather and I get to be slightly more nervous, because I always write a poem for every guest that comes on. Now, normally I do these totally on the spot, but there are times when I think I really don't want to get something horribly wrong. I did actually write it last night, and it was interesting because when I wrote it, I finished it off this morning, and the line was, "Traditions are all these things to me," and I thought, well, hang on a minute, I can't say that, because all these things that I'm listing are not my traditions, and that's kind of the point of tradition, isn't it? So I'm just going to leave you with this poem, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. So, Christmas adverts, the BBC, waiting for the speech at 3, Japanese meal of KFC, tradition can all these things be. Burritos and little donkey, a moment steeped in history, stories told and memories, tradition can all these things be. Just short and sweet.
Wow. And look at that, burritos and KFC. Oh, I don't know when you got a chance to do that. That's impressive.
Can I tell you?
That's impressive.
There was one line missing. My producer won't let me live it down if I don't admit. There was one line missing, and I didn't know what to put in it. So burritos and little donkey fitted in.
That's lovely. Wow. Impressively swift work. I've not even, I can't, I'm not going to go with the whole "Giving You Our Carol," A Christmas Carol. We can't go there because you've had a lifetime of that.
I nearly wore my t-shirt. I had a t-shirt made for me saying "Christmas Carol" because I bet you have to, don't you?
You do.
Paul, it's been absolutely fantastic. Those people listening, please remember, Christmas is about you and the family and the people that you're with. If you don't have anyone to be with, then do reach out to us, and let's make sure that everybody has a Christmas that they can remember and enjoy, whether it's all traditional, whether you rate your Christmas lights, or whether it's you and a KFC and the King's Speech.
No, indeed. Yeah. Odd to think, isn't it? Odd to think.
Paul, we're going to put everything in the show notes about your books and the podcasts that you've been involved in and things like that. And good luck. Enjoy writing the rest of your book, and we'll be looking out for Christmas versions of Miranda and Top Gear and all those things. And have a very Merry Christmas.
And a merry one, and God bless us, everyone, as Tiny Tim observed.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers.